Hey, I'm Brian.
And I'm Berg.
And we're chilling in the Conejo. Hey, if you're like the rest of us in the Conejo Valley, you probably haven't been able to go a day without seeing something on TV about our drought and about the virtues of going native with your yard and getting rid of your lawn. You know, both of us actually have kind of made the decision already to do this. I took out my lawn last year, and Greg now has soil in his yard and is preparing for planting. But what you always hear about is just about the water saving aspects about native plants, when really there's a whole lot more, you know, from, you know, habitat and all these other ideas that we could get across with these types of projects. So we were fortunate to meet a couple folks from Eco Restoration Partners and our buddy Chuck, who's Greg's neighbor, and they've been doing a project over at Chuck's house. And we think we'd like to show you around that project. Jon and Laura here from Eco Restoration Partners. Is that the name of your group?
That's it.
Yeah, and so they help landowners figure out interesting things to do with their yard, and, you know, reduce water use, of course, but also maximize other benefits. So tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys do.
Okay, I'm Jon. We're Eco Restoration Partners. That is Laura and I. We work in partnership with homeowners, with their residents, usually in a suburban area, but we aspire to do larger areas. And what that is that we do is habitat restoration, bringing in native plants, or climate appropriate plants is a broader term. They don't necessarily have to be native, although we do push natives because of their ecosystem services of pollinator habitat and food sources. But we take a holistic approach to designing a family-friendly, healthy residential garden space or gardens on the property.
Well, you mentioned habitat restoration is kind of a lead issue. What kind of habitat you're able to create in people's yards here? What if people did a yard conversion, like you're recommending? What's new? What do they see in their yard that they're not seeing today?
Want to tackle that one?
Sure. I think the number one thing that we often focus on and that everybody loves are the monarchs.
They're flying around.
Yeah, they're all over the place right
they
here.
May pop in front of the camera screen every once in a while. It's amazing the amount of impact you can have by choosing the right plants to tailor to who you're feeding. If you're feeding your family, or if you're feeding the monarchs, or feeding wildlife, you know, like birds. A lot of times, you know, we don't always notice things like sparrows and phoebes and other fun small animals that are so crucial to our environment and even in our residential areas.
So you've been working here. We're at Chuck's house here in Thousand Oaks, and he's got a lot of interesting stuff going on in this yard. And what have you worked with him on, and what was your design approach coming in on a property like this?
Okay, I'll take that. Right next to us, to my right, is an existing chicken run and chicken coop that was here for Chuck. And he's been resourcing waste streams to feed the chickens with a little supplemental feed. But we're aiming to take that, which is great in and of itself. They're spoiled as chickens, and sort of the suburban situation as it exists to this day. But we're adding forage crops like chaya, yakan, canna adulis, white mulberry, moringa. We're trying everything we can to get growing here to produce protein to feed these chickens. Moving to another part of the yard, we found a spot that at certain times of the day lets it get close to 6 hours of direct sun, so we've converted that into a small, maybe 10 by 12 kitchen garden. It's not going to provide a lot, but it could be strictly salads and herbs, which in this case it is, and a few greens. You know, it could be tailored for anybody. We take advantage of vertical space. Another plant in the chicken coop is a passion fruit. And
that's interesting.
That's one you can buy at the store for a high price, but once you get a good vine going, you'll have tons of fruit, so much so that it will fall. You'll get enough for you, you'll be tired of it.
And there's the one tree over there you mentioned that you could actually eat.
Yeah, that's the moringa.
That's the moringa.
Yeah, that's gaining in popularity here. That's from India. It's probably, according to the literature I'm reading, the highest protein leafy green on the planet. So that's very exciting, especially for chicken
Move
fodder.
over kale, man.
Yeah.
It's a no waste stance we have here. Stuff that we have taken off the property. There have been trees. We didn't actually take them off. I'm just using the old lingo, but we removed them, had them shredded. We kept them on the property because that's actual nutrients that you want to keep in your property. I should say that we are a no pesticide, no herbicide, no fungicide. We're pro-life here. We use compost teas and extracts to build the strength, resiliency, immune systems of the plants we put in. And believe it or not, it actually works.
Hey, so here we are. We're with Chuck. This is his yard that we're working in. He's worked with the Eco Restoration Partners to cherry out his yard here. So, what's it about for you? What inspired you to do this with your yard?
Well, I'm trying to think the starting point. You know, the funny thing is it gets back to we had some trees that didn't work in the property. There were a couple. One was in the atrium, provided us some tremendous shade, and in the front yard we had one that yielded a whole lot of falling leaves, and both of them damaged through their root structures, damaged the house. And anyway, that was kind of the trigger. Cutting down the trees made me decide to get some more information on this, because it gave us a chance to consider doing something with the property. And I think, like many people, my wife and I just really had conflicting visions for years and years and years, to the point where we just didn't do anything for almost 10 years because it was going to be too expensive in the counseling bills department.
Yeah.
So I happened to meet Jon first, and through another person who's gardening in the community. And when I saw what he was doing on his property at the community garden, I went over and I saw piles of mulch covering everything, and I had no question this was the guy for me, because I knew primarily at this point we were going to have to rebuild soil, and the key to that was bringing in the mulch. So that is ground zero to this process that I came to understand. If I was going to share something with people to understand, it's about understanding that kind of the root of all things you might be interested in that have to do with your own personal health, the quality of your food, the quality of the air you breathe, our water retention, carbon sequestration. They all are sitting right here in this process where we've applied mulch. We can capture water, we can capture carbon. This is the key to kind of regeneration and restoration on the planet for us. So what started out as a simple project to kind of understand maybe what we would plant has led me to have an understanding that this is probably one of the most powerful things people can do on the planet to help us have a sense of hope based on restoration, and not just restoration, but regeneration. Was that I wanted my property to be a place where people could see principles that would make sense if they were thinking about doing something else with their property. It didn't mean I knew what to do with it yet, but it meant that I could get some people in here who saw that we could show people by our placement on the neighborhood, in the neighborhood on the street, with 2,500 cars a day driving by, I'd recognize that this is a spot to show people some change.
One of the cool things we saw in the corner of your yard here is your beehive.
Yeah.
And you know, that'd probably scare most people. Most people call to get bees removed from their yard, yet you're actively cultivating them. What's that all about?
It started with an educational program for a homeschool group here, and we had someone bring 2 giant beehives in, I realized, for our property in the spring, stacked with what they call the supers, which were filled with the honey, so we were guaranteed a harvest of honey when we decided to do it later in the year. But it was an educational effort, and so we had families come across and observe over the course of a 6-month period different activities in the hive, the way the bees would fly, and of course we got the suits and the smokers and learned to pry them open, and basically became mini beekeepers. But primarily we were just kind of wondering what the heck's going on in there. So at this point we understand we need to have habitat, safe places for the native bees to live, which is very much the mulch environment next to the house, a place you wouldn't expect. And now we have to feed them, so we need things that produce nectar and pollen for them, and the same way with the monarchs. And luckily there's a lot of resources through Jon and Laura. A real value is there is a conversation going on amongst all these resources that were available when I came in to start this that I didn't know anything about, but there's constant networking going on. So working with Eco Restoration Partners means it's a never-ending conversation about you know, how we could do things better here and what maybe we can share with other people.